Now, turn
down
the lights.
You're
Listening to
somewhere in
Dreamland.
Welcome back, dreamers. I'm your host, Ken Mark, and you're listening to Somewhere in Dreamland. Be sure to check out the show on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, the UnX Network, and on the Dreamland website at www.dreamlandpodcast.weebly.com. Are you an UnX subscriber? If not, log on to unxnetwork.com and sign up for a free subscription right there on the main page of the site. Once you're a free X subscriber, you'll receive a monthly UnX newsletter, X blog access, and get the full quarterly UnX magazine digital copy all for free. So go to unxnetwork.com and become a free X subscriber today. Tonight, my guests are author and researcher Preston Dennett and Dolly Safran to discuss Preston's latest book, Symmetry, a True UFO Adventure, which tells Dolly's story of being a lifetime contactee. Dolly's journey, she says, began at the age of 10 months. Then, one night at the age of 14, Dolly gazed out the window of her Florida home to witness a UFO drop from the sky and hover in her backyard. Soon, Dolly would be on an adventure that still continues to this very day. Hey, Preston, Dolly, how are you guys tonight?
Really good. Thank you. How are you?
Well, you know, I'm pushing buttons over here, and everything seems to be working, so I think I'm doing all right. How you doing, Preston?
I'm doing well. It's pretty hot here in LA. Gonna get hotter. Survived 4th of July. It was like a war zone, but yeah, doing well.
Yeah, same here. It's really, really humid here, and I hate it. I really hate it. Does it get humid in LA as well?
Occasionally. Not too bad, but it can get very hot. I mean, it reached 124. Not last year, I think the year before.
Wow.
Maybe it was the year before that. I don't know. Time goes fast. But yeah, so hot you could not go outside.
We've been in the hundreds this year here, and with 99 to 100% humidity. So it is absolutely miserable.
So sorry.
Yeah, you look out your window and you sweat. That's how it is. You don't even have to go outside. Just look out and sweat.
So sorry.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible, but that's what we're near the beach. So what the heck, go jump in the water and you're fine for a little bit. But,
this is true.
Yeah. So anyhow, we're going to talk about your new book, Preston, Symmetry, a True UFO Adventure, and it is all about Dolly's life, right?
Yes. Yeah. I'm pretty excited. It's the first book really that I've written. And this is number 29, by the way. It's the first book that covers just one person's story. I've written a lot of collections and, themed books, schoolyard UFOs and drive-in theater encounters and such. But this is all about Dolly's lifelong experiences. And she's a fully conscious contactee. This is important. She's not using hypnosis, which, I think works, but I've kind of avoided it. There's controversy surrounding it. She's fully aware, does not need hypnotic regression to remember her stuff.
And there aren't many people out there that can say that. I know there are some, but there aren't a whole bunch of them that are fully conscious.
Yeah, there's a few. Jim Sparks is often referenced. And he put out one book and then kind of disappeared off the radar. But I've interviewed a few others, though some of them have used hypnosis, but sort of made their way towards being fully conscious. I know there's a guy in England, Jason Andrews, a young man, who seems to be right at that level as well, but he's also very quiet. I know there are others out there, but they are not putting books out and sort of flying under the radar there.
Yeah, and this was a fantastic book, by the way, and I think it's one of your bigger books as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a full-size book for sure, and definitely one of the most difficult to write, because, we did hundreds of hours of interviews on the phone daily, going over and over each event, And every time we talked, she'd pop something new on me, and still it's happening. I'm sure I'm going to learn something new tonight because we're talking. I'm serious. She's had decades upon decades of experiences, and there's just no way. The book really just skims the surface.
Yeah, I can believe that. And I think that you did a really good job. You guys did a really good job of pinpointing in this book the very important parts that really meant something to probably Dolly and everyone that reads the book. And quite honestly, it's a very different UFO book than that I've ever read, simply because she is fully conscious, and secondly, it is her whole life. So it was super interesting in that regard.
Yeah, I sure hope so. I did want to focus on certain areas, how she learned how to pilot the craft, which you can talk about, what it's like to be taken on board. There's a lot of fear surrounding the subject regarding so-called abductions, which Dolly doesn't use that word.
No.
But yeah, it was awesome to be able to focus on her experiences being taken to another planet. Even you don't hear much about that at all, really.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you. Let's start with this. How did you guys get together? How did you guys run into each other? Preston, I know you do a really great job at vetting a lot of the folks that are in your books, and I'm sure that you had to do that quite a bit with this too, because it's kind of a story you don't hear all the time. So let's start there.
Yeah, Dolly reached out to me in 2016, and it became immediately apparent to me that this was a very extensive account. I was very wary at first, kind of testing the waters to make sure that I wasn't going to, be weird or anything. And as we talked more and more, it became increasingly clear to me like her story was the most extensive case I've ever had the privilege, the honor, the opportunity to work on. She was looking for a UFO researcher. I told her ET contacts that, I want to tell my story. They said, you'll find someone, don't worry, keep searching. I was having a real hard time. And basically went back to them and said, I'm not finding anybody. And this is so interesting to me. They used my name. They said, hey, there's this guy, Preston Dennett. Look him up. He might be a good fit for you. So
He specifically told me he was on YouTube. Yep.
Oh, wow.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the Greys know about me. And I'm like, wow, because I had heard, someone else had told me this a couple of times, actually.
Yeah, we spoke about that last time you were on. A guy in England, I believe you told me, had told you that they contacted you or told him to contact you. Yeah,
that was after Dolly. So I'm like, oh my gosh. And that's crazy to think about. That, wow, I don't know if they're reading my books or listening to our podcast right now. Probably. I mean, they watch everything very closely.
I believe that, Preston. And I also think that, talking to you several times like I have, I totally think that you're a contactee yourself. And the one thing I want to ask you is, when you guys first started talking, were you like, did you have an immediate sense of kind of trust with Dolly? Because I've heard that other contactees seem to have this with each other when they meet or interact. Or were you like, okay, here's this lady approaching me. Like, I'm sure that you get plenty of people, Preston, in your field that contact you with stories all the time. And was she just like another one? I mean, how did that go?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I've been doing this for over 35 years now, and I get a pretty clear sense when someone's pulling my leg or flat out lying or just wants attention, or you've had people like, I'll sell you my story, just send me money. Yeah. No, I knew instantly that she was the real deal, not only because she was wary and very concerned, but I did vet her, of course. She started telling me where she worked. There were other witnesses to her encounters. There's medical evidence. She now has photographic evidence. Initially, she did not, which is not unusual. But she now has some quite extensive photographic evidence. But yeah, I would interview her about the same incident over and over again. The story never changed. It would expand a little bit, certainly. But a witness can get very emotional when they start to talk about it, and it's not unusual, for people to start weeping. And I certainly did that to Dolly. I'm so sorry, Dolly, but yeah, a few times I touched on issues that are very, very personal and very emotional. So absolutely, it was clear to me from the beginning that she was telling the truth. But I did my legwork. I'm very careful when it comes to this subject. You cannot be too careful. There's disinformation and misinformation and a cover-up and all kinds of nasty stuff going on. So yeah, I do my legwork.
All right, fair enough. Dolly.
Yes.
I know that you had an experience that you remember from about 10 months old. Could you share this experience with us so that we can try to wrap our heads around like the origin of your encounter, like where it all began?
Sure. At 10 months old, I was already walking, and I could talk like a year-old. And I was laying in my crib, and I was supposed to be napping. And my daddy called me Peanut. I was very small. And I was looking at my window. It was broad daylight, and all of a sudden, this huge bright light came up into the window. We were about 4 stories up in an apartment on Biscayne Bay in Miami. We had just moved there, and my dad was transferred, and that's where we stayed at first. And I'm staring at it, and the next thing I know, I feel myself doing something weird, and I start looking around, and I'm lifting up, like I'm floating up. I felt like I was floating, and I was levitating up in the crib. And when I got to the top of the rails, I panicked. I thought, what do you think? Oh no,
Yeah.
And I flipped over. And I tried to go back down. I was grabbing the rails, and I was trying to pull myself, and my mind went and gone. I had no more memory after that. It was very, very traumatic, that instance, and I never forgot it. It's like your memory is always guided by the most dramatic events in your life sometimes, and that one hit me hard, and I never forgot.
Okay. So that was kind of what I was going to ask you next was if this memory was something that you kind of pieced together later as being part of a bigger puzzle.
I had puzzle pieces all the time. Things were coming at me right and left throughout my entire life. The next real big impressive moments in my life were the first one was I had was supposedly again napping. My mother was very heavily pregnant with my brother, and she was lying down in her room, and somebody came and got me, and they took me out literally through the wall of our house. And I don't remember much in that, except that I went for a ride. I remember riding somewhere and them telling me that when I was done doing what they were doing with me, they would give me a big red balloon where I was going. And I was like, very cool. Okay. Because I had my tonsils out when I was 2, and I got a big red balloon. They read mine, so they knew that would impress me. I'm pretty sure. And when we got to where I was going, they told me to walk in the door, and they let me go, and I walked in the door. Well, I had a hard time. I couldn't push the door open. It was a big, heavy glass door. It was a Totem store. It's like a convenience store in Miami. And I was pushing and pushing, and I was banging on the door, and the guy looked at me like, my God, why are you doing that? All I had on was underwear from my nap, nothing else. And he ran to the door, and he let me in. He said, where's your mama? Where's your mama? And he's looking around for a car or somebody. Nobody was there with me. And he picked me up. And I'm telling him, I'm supposed to have a balloon. And I didn't say balloon, I said balloon. I couldn't say balloon. And he sat me on the counter. He had one hand on me, the other hand on the phone. He called the police. There was no 911 in those days. You had to call the sheriff's department, and you were lucky if you got him first try. Okay. I'm pretty sure he was having a hard time. There was already an APB ad on me. My parents were searching all over the neighborhood. They had friends helping them. They had the police out searching, and they had my mother in a police car roving the streets looking for me. They got the call once they got through to the sheriff's department to come and get me, to meet up at the Totem, because every time he said, I'm going to put you down, they're coming for you, I scream at him and say, no, I want my balloon. Okay. I was causing trouble. And by the time my mother got in the door, I started crying. I was so mad that I didn't get my balloon. I cried. And she's like, why? How did you get here? They looked at my feet. I had no marks on my feet. I wasn't dirty. I wasn't bruised. Nothing bad happened to me, and they couldn't understand what the hell went on. I couldn't explain it to them, and all they realized is that I was dropped off and somebody had taken me. Okay. The gist of this is that all my mother's doors were locked from the inside. Nobody got in that house that they know of. This freaked my parents out. They changed all the locks. They put locks on the windows, and they bought a police dog, a retired police dog. Her name was Heidi, and it didn't stop them because I kept going. They even took Heidi with me sometimes. They picked me up and the dog.
This is an important case because for a couple of reasons. One, it shows that this is an entirely physical event. There are still researchers out there who are maintaining, this is psychological. No, people are missing from their homes. And second, this shows how contact is usually a lifelong experience, starting very early.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing that I like is that they took the dog as well, because you're not the first person that I've talked to that said that they had a pet dog or whatever as a child, and they'd take the pet with them because it sometimes gave them comfort, I think.
Yeah, well, the Greys are very animal-friendly people, and they love to have an animal on board. They really do. And it's like if they take your dog with you, the dog's allowed to run around, or the cat or whatever, and they'll just play with it the whole time it's there, literally.
So when did you start putting the picture together that something was definitely out of the ordinary?
When I realized that my mother was freaking out because I had abilities that were far and above anybody else in the house, that I was different from everybody. And it dawned on me then I didn't understand why I'm the way I am. Okay. I'm not the kind of person to be depressed about it or freaked out. I knew something was up. I had fleeting memories of contact. In other words, I can remember being picked up. I can remember seeing, craft coming down for me. I remember the one when I was almost 6, when I met Mama. I have that memory, absolutely have that memory. But it just wasn't in a long string of events. It wasn't daily conscious contact. Okay. And my mother, who hated the experiences that were happening, kept telling me, "You're dreaming, you're crazy, this is ridiculous, something's going on." And so I questioned myself. I doubted it all the time. I thought I was Lulu. And when I was 14 years old, I woke up one day and said, "This is crazy. I'm either really crazy and I need help," or I had been candy striping, and you hear people talking to doctors, right? And I thought, I need help because something's wrong with me. And I needed to prove it to myself one way or the other. I was either going to be, know what the hell was going on, excuse my French, sorry, or I was a loon. And so I kept looking for opportunities. It took me about 6 months for the opportunity to present. And it did one night. I was taking astronomy lessons, and I was in the backyard with my telescope. It was late. It was a school night, about 1 a.m. My dad said, "Go to bed." So I went to bed. Florida, in Miami and the Everglades, we didn't have air conditioning. The windows were open. We could hear everything. And grabbed my scope, went in, packed it down, got my jammies on. And I'm not a sleeper. I sleep 2 hours a day, period. And I sat on the edge of my bed and put my elbows up on the ledge of my window frame and started stargazing. Ryan was up that night. It's my favorite constellation. Lo and behold, I'm looking, and all of a sudden, Orion's belt is multiplying in lights, and I'm thinking, damn. And then they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and I see more and more and more, and I'm counting, God, there's at least 50 pairs up there. And they were pairing off, and some of them went east, some went west, north, south. 2 of them came down over our area. One of them went east toward Dadeland Mall on Kendall Road in Kendall, and the other one came down over us in the Glades. And I saw it changing colors as it was coming down. I didn't hear anything, but I felt the hum in the back of my ears once it got close. I saw the trees in my backyard start swaying wildly. There was no wind then. It was a clear night. I had a perfect sky. Okay, no wind. I'm like, okay, you got to remember this. You got to remember this. And I'm staring at the craft, and I'm like, well, it's not one of ours, and I'm not afraid or concerned yet. And I'm looking at it, I'm memorizing the craft. I get up to the port windows, and I'm looking, and then all of a sudden it hit me like a ton of bricks. There was a being in each one of those windows staring straight at me. That was a little more than I could deal with. And I turned. I was going to dive under my bed. I was like, no, wait a minute. I never made the dive. I turned and the room exploded in blue white light. And that's the last memory of that. I woke up on the floor hours later and I was disturbed, upset, crying, pissed off, you name it, because I couldn't remember. I hear my mom in the kitchen and then I realized, oh my God, I'm not wearing my jammies. What have I got on? Okay. And I felt ooey and gooey and I ran into the bathroom, had to get ready for school anyway. So I went and took a bath, got a shower, got cleaned up, dressed, and went in the kitchen because now I know I'm going to talk to my mother about this, okay? She's listening to the radio. She's cooking my dad breakfast. I'm like, Mom, did you see anything last night? Lights, sounds, wind whipping things around with no wind. And she said, what are you talking about? And I said, UFOs. And she was like, well, nope. And she pointed at me and she said, nope. And that meant shut up. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sitting there dejected. I had my first cup of coffee ever because I made the pot. I'm really pissed off. And I'm like, okay, let's try it this way. And I start to talk to her and the radio changes from Paul Harvey to the news. And the very first thing out of his mouth was, 2 Dayland police officers saw a UFO last night and described the whole thing. Perfect.
Oh, wow.
I lost my mind. You get two confirmations. One, you don't have your jammies, and now the cops are talking about it. Okay. I was like, I started freaking out at the table. I was jumping up and down, and she whirled on me and she said, no, it's a dream. Get out of here. Okay. That meant get away from her. She hated that topic. I went running out of there, dejected, upset, and I ran into my father who was coming around the hallway to come in to calm down. You can't calm down. He said, go calm down. He said, meditate, whatever. I already knew how to meditate because we lived near the Hare Krishnas and they taught me. Okay. So I went in the bathroom. I turned the lights out, locked the door because it's the only door I was allowed to lock, and sunk to the floor. And I'm like, I don't know. I was desperate at that moment in my life. I was like, how the hell am I going to remember this? And I made up my mind. I'm replaying it now in my mind, and I'm ticking it through one thing at a time. And I'm telling myself, you're going to remember. You're going to remember. I was shaking. I knew I should remember because I knew it was real. Okay. And when I got up to the point where the bright light hit me, it exploded in my head, and I knew exactly what happened at that moment. I saw all of it. Like it just ran me down, literally ran me down. I started getting a headache. I remembered puking on board that craft. I remember them coming down in an energy ribbon through my room and putting my hand on it with one of them and taking me up. I remember getting in the craft and, you plop to the floor when you go through the door. And I looked over to my side and there's Mama, who I saw when I was 5 years old, sitting there smiling at me. I'm like, I started shaking. I started ball sweating. I mean, it was overwhelming and unbelievable. And I lifted my jammy shirt and puked right into it. I just didn't hold it in. They took me and cleaned me up. They gave me something else to wear. I'm pretty sure they destroyed that pair of jammies. I never saw them again. They came back and brought me back in. And this time, now I'm going into shock. I start shaking. I'm freezing to death. My teeth are clacking. And they decided at that point to let me get up and walk around the craft. I redid a familiarize yourself with where you are tour. And I was allowed to touch things, ground myself to where I was. They even took me to my quarters and I found a brush that I thought I lost on my little side table in my quarter. I have a little teeny cubicle room kind of, with a bed and a little side table and a sink and I was like, oh my God, my brush, I was calming down. I started to hiccup, which is normal when you're coming out of shock. One of them tickled me and got me to stop. And I was like, okay, I'm good. And they took me back, to where I was, and they sat me down. And Mom was like, you okay now? You all right? You know who I am? And I told her, your Mama. You know where you are? And I explained that. And they did 20 questions with me. They were trying to assess me at that point. Mental, what are you doing? And then all of a sudden I hear this voice in my head. It's Talata. And he says, hey, how are you? And I'm like, oh my God, I know who that is. I'm like fishing around in my brain for it. And he said, welcome back. That hit it. That nailed me right there. I knew who he was. And he's the entity that indwells that craft. He runs it. It's his ship. Okay. He is the brains of the operation on that craft. All ET crafts are indwelt by an entity. They're non-corporeal fifth dimensional entities that actually incorporate into the craft. They're built to be biological so that he can indwell it like we indwell our body. Okay. And he's like, do you want to go for a ride? And I actually knew what that meant. And I was like, sure. And I realized where I'm sitting. They sit me into the pilot's seat, and they handed me a controller in my hand. It's like a wand. Okay. And he said, you have to keep contact with it. It hears you thinking, and it tells me I'm joining with you. I can hear you thinking much easier this way, because I don't know how to do it very good yet. I'm a young kid still, and I'm not trained. I knew I wasn't. I was terrified at that moment. I'm thinking, they're going to make me fly this thing? What the hell? They gave me a little briefing on what I was going to do, where I was going to go, how we were going to get there, and he would be with me each step of the way, and we moved out. We went to Saturn, and it took about less than 5 minutes to get there. And
wow.
5 minutes, that's it. When we were approaching, he opened all the screens. He made the ship transparent. That was wiggy diggy because I'd never seen that before.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Not in my memory. Okay. I was like, whoa. And I knew I was sitting in a chair, so I didn't think I would drop out of the thing, but it's like, wow, And then my eyeballs saw Saturn itself, and I lost my mind, because when you see pictures of Saturn or any of the planets or anything, the color doesn't do it justice. There's no print or film of it that actually gives you 3D looking at it, vision of it being there. Okay. And I was shocked. It is unbelievable. It's the gas giant. It's one of the gas giants, and it is huge. And the rings make it even bigger, and it tilts, and oh my God, the rings, oh my God. And I saw everything. I mean, he started giving me astronomy lessons, teaching me about the planet. He was reinforcing what I had learned already, was trying to bring me up to speed of what I'd already been taught, to remember it. We went through the rings. We came back. We pulled back out. We moved away from it. And then he said, let's go see the moon. I'm like, yes, I love the moon. I'm taking astronomy. The moon is like my main objective. I wanted to be an astronaut. Okay. And so we went. He mostly flew that trip. I was too overwhelmed at that moment. And when we came up on the moon, he did elliptical orbits like if you were going to do one of those Etch-a-Sketch things, how you can elliptical orbit the drawing.
Yep.
Many rings in different directions. That's basically how we went around the moon, and we did 8 passes around it.
Wow.
It was a low approach. We were very close to surface, and I got to see many things on the moon.
I bet that was incredible.
It was better than incredible. I could taste it in my mind.
Any bases on the moon?
Yes, there is a base. I saw a base. They have some old structures out there as well. It is not a hollow shell with tons of ETs in it. Okay. It's a real honest to God moon, and it is, got gravity, it has its own small gravity. It has its own weird kind of a little teeny bit of atmosphere that comes up with the gravitational, influences there. And I was taught that right away. And we did, after I saw the lander, we put down. If you were looking at the moon from Earth, you would have seen us up on the rim, the high upper left rim of the moon facing. And we just sat there quietly. And he said to me, it's time to have a talk. You're 14. You're doing what we expected you to do. We're proud of you, that kind of stuff. And he said, want to talk to you about what you're going to do with the rest of your life. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, how, when you're a teenager and somebody's saying the one thing you want to hear, you're like, yes,
Right.
And I was like, okay, go ahead. Keep talking. And he's like, I know you're interested in so many things. And I was interested in nursing. I was a cancer striper already. I was interested in oceanography. I was interested in zoology. I was a junior park ranger in the Everglades. I did all kinds of things. I mean, I love mathematics, engineering, all of it. And he said, "What do you want to do?" And what came out of my mouth, I was shocked that I said it, but that's what I really wanted. All that aside, I wanted to fly bad. I wanted to fly bad. Okay. And I didn't think they would say yes. I thought it was ludicrous that it was even going to come out of my mouth. And I said it anyway. Dead faced. I just said, "I want to fly." And he said, "Okay." We sat down. It's like, wait a minute, say it again. And he said, "Okay, there's things that you have to understand about this. We will put you through some testing." He said, "We got to make sure that you're going to be able to do all this. There are many things you have to learn." And he said, "It's a long road to this." And he said, "It's not going to happen overnight. I'm not going to sit you down and start letting you fly this thing." Okay. I'm like, "Yes, I understand. Yes, I understand. I'm 14 years old. I know it's school coming." They did put me through testing. They did check me out physically, emotionally, mentally, all of it, my psychic abilities, everything, because it's imperative that I was able to use all of my abilities. I could not, and I had to be counted on to do so. There was no turning back. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about this. I was completely invested in it. Okay. It was a very serious situation. And I agreed. I sat down, and the day came, "You're going to start training." I had been doing what most of my life. I'd been taking higher mathematics, astrophysics, stuff like that, astronomy. On the ground, on the earth, I had two uncles who flew. They're pilots, and they had small planes. And I used to go up in the planes with them all the time. So I understood declination, ascension, that kind of thing. I had that fixed in my mind. I knew how to navigate on a boat because we all had boats, and I was taught how to use a sextant. So I knew about that, and it kind of paid into what I was about to start learning. And one of the first classes that I ever took with him was they sat me down and explained that I was going to learn how to remember everywhere I ever was. And that was my first lesson. And it's a good thing I've got an eidetic memory, because boy, did I have to. Every destination that ET travels to, all of them, they have a pilot who's capable of doing that. And you learn how to get where you're going by other pilots who take you there, so that you learn where it is. Because psychically...
You don't have GPS on those things?
No.
I'm just teasing.
No, I'm sorry.
Psychic GPS.
Okay.
It's psychic GPS.
Before you get too much farther, I just want to mention here, Dolly told me this. I'm like, yes, because this is exactly what Jay Gardner told me, a contactee from West Virginia. He was, I think, 12 years old. They took him on board, took him to see Saturn. This is exactly what Kevin Kamen told me. He is a Navy medic. They took him to the moon. He says he nearly crapped his pants. Could not believe it. This is something they do. And they will take you up to the control room, sit you in the seat, and teach you how to fly these craft. I've talked to many contactees who have had this experience, and to hear Dolly describing it in such detail is like, I'm like, wow, this is awesome. That's what I love about Dolly's story. She was able to really fill in the blanks to a lot of the questions I have regarding all this. Like, are the craft alive? I've had a lot of people tell me this. I had a sense that this craft itself was a living being. Yep, that's exactly what Dolly says.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I mean, I don't even want to know what was going through your 14-year-old mind. I mean, I feel like they'd built you up to this, but there still had to be, like, your mind had to be blown at some point there.
Yes, absolutely. I remember the very first time on Earth when I went to the planetarium in Miami, okay, the Space and Transit Planetarium. It's near the bay. And we went into the big dome thing, and they turned on the aileron, okay? And it shows all the stars in the sky. And this thing heats up, and it starts to move. And all of a sudden, above your head is the entire night sky as it should be seen. But we have light pollution, and you can't. And I lost my mind. I sat there. My mind was completely, totally, and utterly blown. I had a deep into my chest feeling that I'm going to go there. Okay. I just knew it. All right. I felt it, and it never left me. It never left me. And then all of a sudden I wake up one day, and I'm sitting in a seat, and I'm about to go. And it blows your mind. I jump up and down. I get all excited. Are you kidding? It's like I have to calm myself down sometimes. It's a routine that I go through, and it helps me settle in. Okay, because it's like woo woo, let's go, wahoo. It's great.
I can understand that. Now, did any of your other family members have experiences as well?
My father was a contactee. My mother may have been, but she only told me one thing about her childhood, and then that was the end of that. She never spoke about it again. There are people in my family who are psychic all over the place, but it's mostly my dad and my great grandmother who lived with me my whole life.
Okay.
So yeah.
That seems to be sort of a pattern too. It is definitely generational, but usually they'll pick one sibling, one person in each family line.
Yeah.
Each generation, I should say. Not entirely. There are people who have siblings who have contact as well, but generally it's one person who gets the brunt of it. It's true in my family. It's me. I've got 5 brothers and sisters. And, yep, I'm the black sheep.
Yeah. I get it. It does go generationally. And another thing I've been working on is that I've been looking at is how it's following genealogically how it lays down, because I've found out that just through my little show that a lot of people with Celtic heritage and Native American heritage seem to be contacted more often. And I find that fascinating. So I always like to ask that.
We did my genetics, and I have every single native people on this planet in my bloodline. I have Swedish Same, Russian Same. I have Celtic. I have the German. The Celts were near Germany. They had fights with them all the time, but it bred into their lines. I have all of that. I have Amazonian blood. I have Incan blood. I have Cherokee blood. The list is endless. It's a long, 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 long list. And it's interesting. I also have English blood, and I don't want to go into that because it embarrasses me. Okay, it's not bad. It's good. It just seems phantasmagorical to me that I'm walking around with it. I'm related to a few presidents, and it's creepy to me. I call myself a Hans 57 Mad Dog mix of star people, and it's true. I am.
Yeah, that's quite a DNA chart you have there.
Yeah. I also have Japanese, Korean, Mongolian, and Chinese blood in me, and Philippine blood in me as well.
That's really interesting.
Yep.
So did your father ever share his experience with you?
Yeah, he did. When I was in the process of coming to grips with myself when I was 14, he came home later that day and said, "We're going to talk in the morning. I'm going to take you somewhere. We're going to go have a chat." I'm like, okay, and I was hiding it from him then. I didn't know how extensive his contacts were. I just knew that my dad was psychic. I didn't think about it. And he got me up in the morning, and we went and sat in a parking lot drinking coffee and eating toast that my mom packed up. And he was trying to get me to tell him what happened. And I was just sitting there staring at myself thinking, I don't know. He says, "Well, let me tell you about me." And that's when he broke and let me hear it. And he was about the same age. He and his brother, they grew up in Wisconsin and on a farm, dairy farm. And they ran away from home for a day. He grabbed a turkey and some beer and went to it's a big forest preserve up there on a lake. And they lived just north of Bancroft, around between Bancroft and Stevens Point up there near a big preserve. And so they killed the turkey, plucked it, spit it, and started cooking it. Well, they forgot to take the guts out, and it exploded all over the place. They were gross with it, okay? And they ran to the lake, and they jumped in. They took the turkey. They cleaned it up because nobody throws away dinner, okay? Finished gutting it. We're getting ready to walk back and respit it to finish cooking it, and they saw light come up over the lake. And my dad said it went to the middle of the lake and sat there for a second, and the next thing they knew, it shot from that part of the lake over to the top of their heads in a split second. And he said they were looking up on it. His brother was standing behind him, and all of a sudden this big blue white beam came down on them. And my dad said it took him, brought him up, and he was brought in to speak to several grays. And he said a tall white was with them. And they did to him what they did to me. They questioned him. They wanted to know what he was going to do with his life. He's just a poor farm boy, okay? He had, in his mind, my dad is a genius, okay? And he had dyslexia, which made things difficult for him in school. And he was learning to teach himself things because it's the only way he learned. And he could draw. He could draw anything. He wanted to be an architect really, really bad. And they encouraged him. They said, keep doing it. And they said, find a high school to go to that'll teach you drawing, specifically drafting and stuff like that. So he ended up going to Crane Tech in high school. And he ended up in the Army at that point, just before he finished, for reasons, I guess. And he became an airborne ranger. And after he married my mother, he sat down and he seriously put himself to work, and he taught himself how to be an architect. He never went to college. He got his high school diploma by mail from Crane Tech, and he passed all his state boards first time out the gate. His drawings were so impressive that Miami-Dade County used them in their park.
Wow.
There. They used park drawings. He's worked for NASA. He's worked for Miami-Dade. He's worked for U.S. Army architectural engineers. He has done unbelievable, untold projects. I can't even begin to tell you what they are. A lot of them are NDAs for me. I can't go into it, but he's a pretty cool guy, and he's had constant contact as well.
Was he able to offer you any kind of advice through his experiences?
Yes, he said that this is. He pretty much I was a loner to begin with. I was isolating myself all the time. It's hard to be around kids who don't understand you, He said, don't worry about it. Just be who you are. Always remember who you are. And he said, do what you're destined to do. He said, it's your path. You walk it, you take it, And he said, enjoy your life here. You have things to do here too. He said, but you're going to have to live in duality. And he was right. I did. I lived very much in duality.
You're really lucky, Dolly, because I've talked to a lot of contactees whose parents were not as forthcoming. And often they finally got the story literally on their deathbed. One guy, he asked his mom, she's like, I got a confession. I always said I didn't believe you and blah, blah, blah. I actually did have a sighting when I was a young woman, and this craft followed her home. And he was, having major, major contact, still is.
Wow.
So I think that's probably the rule when someone's having contact. One of their parents is too, or maybe an uncle or not, but usually it's a parent.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I definitely think you're right on that.
Yeah, what's strange for me in my life also is that my mother's father was also a genius of note. He was a mathematical genius, and he was a military engineer as well. He went to Annapolis, and he got his degrees in Auburn. And he's Georgia Tech, he's a rambling wreck from Georgia Tech. Anyway, he also worked for the governments. And it's weird that my dad met my mother and fell in love with her. And then all of a sudden, here's this other person working for the government in my life. And it was a really strange, dance we were all doing.
Said it before, it's all connected somehow. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I can't tell you how many people have told me, I met my wife through very unusual circumstances. And they both turned out to be contactees. My brother ended up, he's skeptical. His wife has had all kinds of experiences. Same with my other brother. Yeah, I've heard it a million times.
Yeah, it's really crazy. One of the things I was interested in the book is you talked about some of these grays being biological androids, and they were controlled by AI.
Yes, the small grays are mostly all AI. They there's a very short race of grays who are not race. I don't want to say race here, ethnicity, okay? Because they're all related. They're all the same thing, all right? Just look different. They're short and they're kind of troll looking. And I found it funny because I'm describing it to Preston one night, and he said, oh my God. And I said, what? And he said, my sister-in-law described that, drew a picture of it. And I'm like, really? Do you have the pic? And he said, yeah. And he showed it to me, and boop, there it was. These are real short little gray guys. And I think they developed the short AI grays for everybody. Okay. They are workers because gamma radiation is so deadly in space. And they're the guys that take on the tough jobs. Okay. And they are biological. They have no sex, though. They're autonomous in that they can work independently of their instructions, but they're not conscious. They just AI.
Do they communicate at all?
Yeah, they can talk.
Okay.
They can speak to you psychically. Most people are afraid of them, which I find sad, because if you actually spoke to one and expected an answer from it, it would answer you. It will tell you what you want to know. So
yeah, this was one of the things that definitely answered some questions for me, because people would say, oh, I was taken and they weren't emotional. They had no emotions. And I can realize, yeah, they're probably describing these short AI grays who are not living beings as we think of it and can be switched off and on. Whitley Strieber talked about this. He and Dolly talked and compared notes on it.
I'm shocked, yeah.
It's right on pace, because one of the questions I was going to ask you is, obviously, reading the book, I know that the grays that you worked close with, like Mama and those on the ship, they obviously had emotions. But I wanted to know if these ones, ever showed emotions, because I was kind of trying to follow that trail that Preston just described.
They are taught to not kidding around about this. They are taught not to react violently to anything. They have no violence in them. They are taught to be as helpful as they can, but they are taught to do what they have to do. Okay. And they have abilities as well as any other gray. They're given those abilities to use at will when it's necessary. But the one weird thing about them is if you do something weird or funny, they will laugh at you. And that's the only emotion I've ever seen come out of one. And it's a weird kind of laugh, but they laugh, they chuckle. And it's like, is that make me feel better or what? Something really stupid and you're laughing at me. Thank you so much. And that's what they do. So,
Dolly, how long have you been in contact altogether? Just so that the audience can I know we're kind of jumping around on questions. I just want the people to know how long you've been in contact, because I'm kind of throwing out this information and I'm asking these questions that are kind of skipping around the book. And I just want them to know how long you have been with them.
Conscious or unconscious since birth. I was, my birth is, got a lot of controversy swirling around it. I was a twin where my twin was absent during birth. It freaked the doctors out because I'm an identical twin. There were 2 cords and 1 placenta, as what the identicals are, but my twin was gone. And they don't know how that happened. Yeah.
I want to just, expound on that a little bit, because Dolly's, had that experience at age 14, which was maybe an hour or 2. Dolly could clarify that, but she would be taken for, a week, 2 weeks at a time, come back, and it's just moments later. Taken again a few months later, another week. Taken again a few nights later, another week. So literally there's, a year or 2 of just, or more perhaps, living fully among the ETs.
Right. I was born in 1958. I am now 64 years old. But in actual physical time, I'm probably, you can add about 5 or 6 more years to that. I'm probably closer to 70 now.
Wow. So time does work differently for them, or can they manipulate time?
They are able, they travel and they exist outside the timeline when they go interdimensional. They know how to operate. They're 3rd dimensional beings like we are. We're all together in this, okay? But they have crossed a line in that they've developed interdimensional capability. They actually communicate with interdimensional beings. They work with them. They're that advanced, okay? They're way more advanced than you could possibly imagine.
So I know we mentioned Talara. Am I saying it right? It's a hard one.
Talara.
Okay.
Talara.
I'll let you say it.
Okay.
Is kind of like a symbiotic being and with this object or this ship. And how exactly does that work?
Okay, well, he's not symbiotic. He's a full being. You are a being. You are indwelling your own body. Your consciousness is an entity, and it indwells the body that you're in. You use it, and when you're done with it, the body goes away, and the energy that the body uses to be a body, uh, the Vedics called it prana. I like to use that word. I like that name for it. Your prana, the energy of your physical form, goes and hangs out with you until you come back again. You are reincarnated from time to time as you need to learn. Our entire universe is a physical construct, all of it. That's all 3D. 1, 2, 3. The first 3 dimensions are the physical part of our universe. That's all the planets, the suns, the dust, the plasma that's in between everything. All of it is physical, 3D physical. But we exist it's very gravity heavy. And to be here, we have to, our consciousness has to be transported here, and our prana is sent ahead of us. We send it, each one of us, to be born so that we can indwell our own selves and be here. This is how we all learn. We're all in source together. Every single entity is the same type of energy, and we're all in this universe together as source. And we know everything in source, but you can't employ what you know that way. You have no real physical experience of it. And the idea is to come here in a physical plane and learn and gain wisdom and employ what you know. It's the only way for you to consciously evolve. And that's why this universe works this way. Inside that physical construct, the 3 dimensions that you know of, there are more. There are 12 total, okay? And they're actual beings, entities like us, who have advanced, and they're living in different dimensions not above us. We're all together in the same space. Where you're sitting right now and where I'm sitting right now, we're communicating. So we kind of have a contact thing going on, okay? And all the dimensional beings in my space can actually communicate with yours as I'm communicating with you. And they see us. You want to know what a guardian angel is? It's an entity who is dimensional in your space, who watches you all the time. They know you're there, and they feel they've learned that we exist together. They love us, and they'll take care of us and save us sometimes from ourselves. That's what your guardian angels come out to be. Okay? When we physically leave our bodies, we go back to source. That means we leave the 12 dimensions and we go outside of that, but we're still in the universe. It's just a different level of consciousness that we're going to. So Talada is a 5th dimensional, disembodied, non-corporeal entity. He is in the 5th dimension. He lives there. He comes through travels through into this dimension that we're in, the 3rd, and he comes to the craft, and like we can indwell our body, his prana is with him, and he puts it toward the craft itself. He enjoins with it. The craft is biological for that reason, because your prana can attach to a biological construct and live with it and exist with it, and that's how he indwells the craft.
Yeah, this is an important point, and this all sort of speaks towards the whole crash retrieval phenomena and reverse engineering, and why we're never going to fully reach the point where the ETs are at, who are
not
eons ahead of us. The craft are flown psychically. There are craft that we have in our possession, according to whistleblower accounts, that we have not even been able to open. And when we do get inside, like, where's this? How do you fly this thing? They're so far beyond us. We're never going to catch up to the degree that they're at. So I just think that's an important point.
Yeah, that's a good point, Preston. And that was actually one of my next questions. And that's why I love talking with you, because I don't have to do much work. You just do it for me. So I love it. You're my workhorse, Preston. So that is a pretty deep explanation. And I think that it really probably makes sense. I'm going to have to really think about it because I'm slow. But
okay, I'll give you a key to work with. Okay, I'll give you a key. Energy. Everything is energy. Everything is light. Pure light. Energy is light. In the 3rd dimension, we're gravity heavy. That means all of the particles and all the light in this dimension packed together densely. You're still see-through. You still have light between every molecule in your body. You are a light being, okay? But you're gravity heavy here. Dimensional beings are not. They have lost that. They are no longer need a shell to indwell, okay? And they live outside of that. They've evolved, and it is their consciousness that has evolved to it. They don't have tech like us. Bob Lazar said it best. I'm so glad that he started talking to everybody, and he's giving you the truth, okay? You open up a craft and you look inside, and there's nothing in there. There's chair, there's a console where Tolada does energize from, but it's mostly to run the mainframe of the power part of it. He's indwelled in the entire craft, but he moves through that, okay? He can make that ship change. They can manipulate light. They can manipulate energy. They can manipulate anything. They can levitate you because they're that good at using their consciousness to do so. They can create with light. They can make you see things. They are completely 100%. People call them angels. People call them all kinds of things, but they are light beings, and they're extremely, extremely advanced. I want people to realize that. They have no need whatsoever to be involved in our issues. They are autonomous. They expect us to be autonomous. They want us to catch up with them. And we're kind of failing at that right now, just to be honest with you, okay? They want us to use our psychic abilities, and humanity has been dumbed out of it, and it's a serious situation. They want you to figure out how to make this come up in you and work again. You have a pineal gland in your brain. You can see and hear anything energetically and be psychic just like they are. And they want you to work at it.
Are there other factors that are holding us back from doing that because they don't want us to? Maybe
No, none. They're not. Well, that happens when you start using your abilities. You start to hear the truth. You can download information from the universe itself. You can hear them. They can teach you. The dialogue will begin at that point. When you can speak to them psychically, the dialogue begins, and your education begins with them, and they will welcome you into their society. But as long and until we all individually, each one of us, start to use our stuff, they can't hear you. You can hear them. They can transmit to you, but you cannot hear them. I mean, speak to them. They can't. It's a one-way conversation. Your understanding is incapable of hearing it because your body won't let your conscious mind, who you really are, come through to your physical body and assimilate it. Your body is dead meat.
Is that why so many psychics and people like that say how important meditation is, because it
Yes.
helps you kind of break that wall?
Yeah. Well, the number one reason that we need to meditate here is you have to learn how to drop off all the terrible, terrible distractions that are on this planet. And the top 5: fear, hate, avarice, you're being polluted, okay? And you're not able to use your ability to just focus. And that's what meditation is for. Because once you can drop all the distractions around you and all the negativity that's going on around you and learn to just be, this is a short trip on this planet for everybody. You realize that, right? Your life is limited. And when you drop this body, you're going to go on, and you might come back because you didn't learn what you were supposed to learn while you were here. We all choose to be here to learn something. And if you fail to do that, you're going to recycle over and over and over till you get it. The idea is to use the gift that your body is. It's a DNA miracle that you have all these abilities in you and you're not using them. And there's an element on this planet, there's positive and negative, there's good and evil, yin and yang, you name it. And there's a faction on this planet that is strictly not wanting anybody to get that and have deliberately, despicably stopped you from using your natural abilities. And this has gone on for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's got to stop. And that's why I'm talking.
I love it. So you touched on something that I want to ask you about. And you said these beings, this ship, it can change. It can make you see things. It can do lots of things. Now, I talk with another researcher who is pretty adamant that some of these beings and crafts themselves can cloak themselves and emulate things like trees and different objects and clouds and things like that.
Dead on. You got it. You just said it perfect. I'm proud of you. You got what I said. Thank you. You're one of the few. Oh my God. Thank you. Okay. A plus. Yes, they have the ability. Their skin is a type of photocell skin. If you could call it that. It's way more advanced than that, but they can do cuttlefish things. They can make themselves look like a tree or a cloud or a bus or anything they want to. Talat is capable of reshaping himself if he needs to. They can do any of that, yes.
Yeah, I find that super interesting because a lot of the things that he has researched, he's very, very vigilant about, look, before this stuff started happening, this tree was not here. When I took the picture, this tree is here. Like things like that. Yeah. And he's to the point where he's like, they've kind of followed him and they mess with him a lot. And he's like, I think that a lot of the people think that they're seeing or think that they have ghostly activity, and they really don't. It's these things checking on them and being curious and doing things like that. So I think there's something to that.
There really are ghosts. Okay, I'll take you through the trip here. Your energy, your consciousness, sometimes when you pass away, it's sudden or it's tragic or whatever, and you don't feel like you need to go yet. Some people actually confuse themselves and they stay and they walk around among us. Okay. That really is what you would call a ghost. Okay. They're just, Preston can tell you he can OBE and he can actually walk people to where they need to go. Because they're walking around, why am I here? What am I doing? Blah, blah, blah. They don't realize they're dead. Okay. So yeah, there are ghosts. Then there are also demons. They actually exist. There are entities who are so negative, and I don't want to go into it, how icky this is for me to think about, but yeah, there's demons. There's demonic entities out there. Negative. We're surrounded by that right now. It's everywhere.
Yeah, part of the thing is contactees have a real strong psychic awakening. This is part of the thing that ETs are attracted to. People are profoundly psychic, and part of the thing they really want to wake up in people. So it's pretty much the rule that contactees have experiences with being able to see spirits, mediumship, or healing, or out-of-body experiences, astral travel, precognition, and even levitation. I was doing research on that, and I asked Dolly, I don't suppose you've ever physically levitated, because I knew what happened to Whitley Strieber, Stephen Greer, a bunch of people.
Me.
It's like, oh, really? No.
Yay!
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yes.
I remember a time when I was a child, and I don't know if I've ever said this on the air. That I have. When I was a kid, I used to be able to levitate and make myself levitate and do it at will. And one time I did it and got stuck on the ceiling and freaked out and never tried it again. But I remember that like it was yesterday. It happened.
Yeah, I first time I went up, I was trying to hide from my mother. I was 2. And I was trying, and I was looking at the closets thinking, that would be a good place for me to get up to. But there was no way up there, none. And I sat there and I thought about it, and I worked at it in my head. And next thing I know, boop, I'm going up. I also have memories of being able to, I would walk. I left the house a lot when I was a kid. They had to lock me in sometimes. I'd walk outside and go hang out and walk around outside in the dark and go figure, wonder why. And sometimes I would literally lift up. I could make myself lift up into the air and I'd fly around and stuff and then come back in. And I did this often. And I could make it into the tops of trees, and it would drive my father crazy. Like, what are you doing up there? And I just smile at him. I don't know. What are you doing? I learned to, evade their questions, and it lasted for a long time. And then for a while, I was so busy doing everything else, I forgot to work on it or keep it up. And I also found out that negative emotions can get to you, and teenagers and negative emotions kind of go together. And so I thwarted myself for a while. And then I had a big experience. I was an adult I was in my 20s, and I was painting the hall, basement stairway, the walls. And I cleaned up, and I had both cans in my hand, and I was walking them down to go put the lids on them, and I stepped off the first step into midair.
Wow.
And I was like, and I landed on the bottom stair after the turn, and I know I levitated down. I stopped my fall. I mean, I just coasted down easy and landed. I was like, ooh, I can still do it.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
Well, I'm scared to death of heights now, so I don't. It's no joke. I don't know what happened. I never used to be until I got to be about 35, 40 years old, and now I just I don't even like being 10 steps up on a ladder. So
fear of breaking stuff is a powerful thing.
It is. It is. So I do want to tell you guys that and touch on a few parts of the book that I absolutely loved.
Okay.
The few parts of the book that I love the whole book, but the two parts that really, really stuck with me, and I'm a sucker for old stuff, I guess. But the two parts that I loved were the little nods, because they gave you several little nods in the real world and on Earth, as to your not being crazy. The one story was the guitar player that you heard playing. I love
that guy. Yeah, I was a kid. I was young. I was probably 9, 10. And I distinctly remember him. He was, we were on a mothership. Okay. We were being transported to the place where I went to go learn. And I was supposed to be going to my room because I just finished eating, and I heard music, and I love music. Okay. And I turned around and I walked back out of the room, and I walked in to find him sitting down with a bunch of people around him, and he was playing, and I was enthralled. I was like, oh. And I'm a kid. I don't care what you tell me. I'm going to go right up to you and touch you. Okay. If I make physical contact with you, it's a way for me to read you. Okay. I wanted to feel what he was singing in his head and singing on the guitar and playing. And he smiled at me, and he said, "Do you want to play?" And I was like, yes. I'd never held a guitar in my life. And he put his guitar in my hand, and he taught me G and C and taught me how to strum it, the chords. Okay. And that was it. That was on. It was on. I had to have a guitar after that. And I started taking lessons after that, but I loved him, and he had a beautiful, interesting voice. Okay. And, and I knew his name. His name was Jimi Hendrix. He told me his name. And I grew up, and I live a very weird life. I don't pay attention to what goes on in the world. They've stopped me from doing that. They don't want me to be inundated with all kinds of stuff. I needed to concentrate on what I was doing. And I'm talking to Preston, and I have no damn clue. And he says, well, he's talking about Jimi Hendrix being dead. And I went, what? And I went, huh? What? And I was devastated. It devastated me because I didn't know he died. And I knew good and bloody well that he's a contactee, and he's with them a lot. And that just broke my heart. It really did.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, he never went fully public with it. He did talk about several sightings. He did make some veiled comments about how there would be big changes in our solar system. But his bandmate, Brian Knight, did talk about a face-to-face contact in upstate New York where ETs landed and saved their lives. They got trapped in a snowdrift, were snowed in on the highway, and would have died. This UFO lands, and ET comes out, goes around the car, melts all the snow, does direct telepathic contact with Jimi Hendrix. And Brian Knight is sitting there freaking out. And Jimmy just said, shh, don't talk about this. This is our special secret. So he was definitely a contact. He talked about several sightings as well.
That's crazy. And Preston, thank you for including those little nods in the book, because I found them so important and fascinating. And I just want to commend you for including that. And the other one that I found fascinating was the Kirsty's birthday. I'll tell you, it gave me chills. It really gave me chills.
I was very young. I became aware of it, physically aware of it. I remember the experience. I was little, and they took me to a party. They told me we were going to a party. And when we got there, it was outside, and it was very festive. And I realized that nobody spoke English. They were all speaking Swedish. Okay. And they told me that Mama said, you're related to these people, but we have to be careful. And I didn't understand then what she was talking about, but I was very good at obeying her. Okay. So I didn't do anything I wasn't told to do. All right. And I sat on the bench he was on the other side toward the house, and I was on the side that was like with the little yards behind us. Okay. Trees. And I sat there very calmly, and, they sing, they were all singing songs, and he had his pad out and he was drawing everybody individually, and then he drew us all as a group. And I had a wonderful time. I ate wonderful food. I'm Swedish, okay? And that's my closest nationality is Swedish. And it just was glorious. It was a wonderful day. And they had me in an outfit that I gave back, but they let me keep my little kerchief hat, okay? I still have it to this day in my possession, okay? And I always remembered it, and I kept it a secret. Mama told me that I'm not supposed to talk about it. And we go forward in years, okay, before my 14th birthday. And my grandmother's like starting to want to do more Swedish things and stuff. And then after my wake-up call, she's in a room one day. She's looking at something, and she has a book, and it's by Carl Larsson. It's the famous artist in Sweden from way back in 1804, something like that, 1807. And she said, look at this picture. And I looked, and she pointed to the picture of me. And she said, that's you. I know it's you. And I realized, you bet that's me. I recognized the situation instantly. I knew what it was. And I was like, oh, my God, he really did paint it, and it's really in a book. And oh, my God, And the next time they came and picked me up, I faced Talar off about it. I said, what did you do? That's not my time. How the hell did I get back there? And he said, we did it on purpose. It's proof for you. It's so that you have something to show. And so in the book, you'll see a picture of me next to that picture, and you can see that it is me. That's me.
Yep, and that painting was done in 1919, I think. So this just goes to show how they can,
they
manipulate
out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That actually gave me chills when I read that. I was like, oh, because first of all, I'm an art nerd. So I like art, and I'm pretty familiar with Carl Larsson. And I knew exactly what it was, what picture you were talking about. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I saw the picture, in the book, and I was like, wow, that's incredible. Really is. Yeah.
I'm excited about it. I think about it from time to time. It's a wonderful, beautiful memory for me that they gave me, and I felt they don't like to do that too often. They won't do it too often because going back in history is okay up to a point, but you can't mess with what happens. You can't affect it in any way. Okay. They don't like going forward in the future either because that is unknown, and they prefer to leave it that way. It's too dangerous to try. Somebody may have at some point in their evolution and it caused trouble. Okay. So, I learned it was also to draw me into wanting to understand time and the difference between being in a timeline and then outside of space-time. And it's interesting. Einstein was right. Okay. Speed plus distance equals time. It's real true. That is one of the basis theories of relativity, and it's true. We had a couple of one astronaut and his wife who did the experiment on board the ISS. They sped it up a little bit for him. He had a stopwatch and a walkie-talkie, and so did she, a time watch. And it was on the micron clock, and they had charts and everything and boards. They were, clicking and doing everything, and they videotaped the entire experiment. And they began, and they realized that the faster he went ahead of her, his time slowed down and hers sped up.
Wow.
And it freaked them out.
Yeah.
They proved it. Okay. You should look it up. It's there for you to read in the record at NASA. You can find it.
And I definitely will.
Yeah.
So has there been any pushback from the ETs because you've decided to come forward with your story, or did they want you? It sounded like they wanted you to, right?
Actually, I kind of made up my own mind about it. When I was in my early 20s, I started to open my eyes to what was going on around me and looking. Okay. By the time I was 30, I was convinced that I fully expected to hear somebody else with my contact experience or people talking about UFOs in a positive light, that they exist, and everybody's walking around. You're crazy if you see UFOs still. Okay. And it bothered me a lot. And, pilots didn't talk about it. Nobody talked about it. If you did, you were in trouble. You get fired. In the military, they're also, shh, don't, they're very compartmentalized and everything. So I started feeling Mama out first, and then I felt Talata out about it. And he called in some of what you would call an elder. They don't really have government, okay? They have wise ones, elders, okay? And everybody sat around and jotted over for a little while. And when I say a little while, we're talking weeks of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. They analyzed everything. What would happen if I did, and what would I say, and what were the consequences of my actions and all that. They needed to know that I needed to be protected, and oh boy, I've been protected. There's just a lot going on with that. Then they briefed me and what to expect, and it goes way beyond what they told me to expect. I've run into a few. Preston can tell you, I've had a few moments of going, oh, lots of lessons to learn in this. Okay, so yeah, and I fully my second wish of doing this was to find others like me. I want so bad for everybody to just start talking. If you've had an experience, come out with it. Talk, because I'm not the only one. I know I'm not, and it's a little frustrating for me because we're a community and we need to bond. It's time. We need to get together and coffee clutch something. It's all got to come out. And this kind of goes along with their agenda and disclosure. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I bet you do have to really have a certain level of protection, especially from some of the powers that are out there right now. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say on that. So before I let you go, I do have a couple of very important questions to ask.
Okay.
Why are UFOs more frequently spotted in certain areas over others?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is density of population. Another one is that the Earth is got magnetic field lines, and they surf them. It's like a giant magnetic ocean surrounding us and all the way through the universe. And they surf those waves. That's how they operate their craft. And some points on our planet are highly, highly magnetically appealing for them to be riding on. And they use them. Yes.
Okay.
It's easier to.
There's certain locations, too, that draw them in. They are, showing themselves to people. Remember the Ariel Elementary School case?
Yep.
In Africa, Zimbabwe? That's not unique. I wrote a whole book about schoolyard UFO encounters. This is part of their agenda to announce their presence. So they will hover over drive-in movie theaters, schoolyards. They will do waves of sightings over population centers. There's a lot of cases of them hovering over mines. They're definitely watching over rocket launches and things like this. Anything nuclear, they're very closely watching that. So there are certain UFO attractors.
Right.
So, another important question.
Okay.
There has been some speculation that Bigfoot is an interdimensional being, and a lot of times he's been spotted over and over again accompanying a UFO. Is there any relations there, or?
Yes.
Okay. See, confirmation. I love it.
And they're intelligent. They're sentient. They're spiritual like we are. They're soul. They have consciousness, and they are psychic as all get out. Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'll confirm that too. I did a whole study on that. There is a connection there.
Yeah, there has to be. It just it happens too often, and I figured why I had Dolly here, and she's so, inquisitive herself, and she has so much information that I would just ask the questions that I want to know answers to. So,
well, look at it this way: ET doesn't just watch over us; they watch over animals, they watch over plants, everything, planets. This is how they operate. They are the they care about everything, and everything is fascinating to them, and they're huge scientists, and they love to learn and explore. And when a planet's going down, they will lift out enough of the animals to keep them going. Nothing is really extinct here. It's somewhere else already. And they're tending it until they can move it to somewhere else. They have huge planetoids like Dyson spheres that are huge worlds that they've created to be a gangway, a resting place for them to go to different points in the galaxy that we're in, and as well as the universe itself. Not all the animals.
We talk about this in the book. That was part of Dolly's mission, lifting up animals, and for that matter, plants who are in danger, and pulling them on board these huge motherships and transplanting them to, these Dyson spheres or other planets even. They are the gardeners, Dolly has told me several times.
Yes, the zoologists and the gardeners. Botany and zoology, yep.
So, Dolly, what is your mission now? What is the end game for you now?
I am absolutely engaged in what I'm doing here right now, in spreading the word. I am going to keep going until the next phase, and that will be coming sooner than you think. And it is my hope and my goal, and that as many people start talking and trying to learn how to use their abilities. I will say this to you. What's coming at us is important. It's nothing to be afraid of. We're temporary on this planet anyway, and people are autonomous. They can decide which way they want to go. Either you want to learn this or you don't. Take your pick, okay? But there is an end game here, and you're either going to stay on this planet or you're going to go somewhere else. That is a fact, okay? One way or the other. So my position is this. If you're interested in what I have to say and you want to learn for yourself and you want to dive deep into this and start digging for it and learning, I am available to talk about it. I will spread the word as much as possible, because there is an agenda, okay? There is an actual a series of events that are coming. And it's more important than the events. It's more important than the events is for you all to have knowledge. I do not want to let anybody go not knowing what's about to happen and not having that choice in their hands. We're too much slaves on this planet. We need to stop, get off the slave train, and make up your mind about what you want to do for real. But you need the truth, and you haven't had it, and it's time.
I would agree with that. And Preston, that's really nothing different than what we've heard before from other contactees, right?
Exactly. I would say most of the contactees who have any recall at all have visions, dreams, or direct messages from the ETs about UFOs showing up in large numbers and lifting us off the planet in the case of a huge disaster. And definitely that's the most common message. They're warning us about nuclear proliferation, pollution, our warlike ways, corruption, all these sort of things. If you look at what's actually happening to people when they're taken on board, it does not support the so-called evil ET alien, threat at all. It's very encouraging. People are being physically examined. That's the scariest part, but they're being healed. They're taken to the engine room, shown how the craft work. They're given warnings. They are psychically woken up. It's all very positive if you look at it objectively.
Why do they have such an interest in us as humans, Dolly?
They are our progenitors. They are literally why we exist. We are related to them. We are genetically identical to them. We may time out differently genetically. They may look a little different from us, but they're the same thing. They're human as we are. And they have brought us here to let us learn to catch up with them. Okay?
Is that why we can kind of, is that why we can procreate with them? Because we're so
yes,
close
absolutely.
Okay.
We're genetically close. Yeah. Well, one of the reasons that people talk about my DNA, they'll say, "Oh, my DNA was taken, or my sperm, or my ovaries, or I've had a baby, or whatever," is basically this. For the last 80 years, our poles have been excursioning, and our magnetosphere is down. It's probably right at 40% right now. That's huge. It's letting in magnetic gamma radiation. and it's destroying us. It's taking our DNA out. The exams that you are going through and the things that they're doing with us is to bolster us up genetically, to hold us back up so that we're alive to make it through what we're about to have happen to us. They do not want us to expire. You realize that the human race was starting to become sterile in the 70s. They knew about it then. Okay. It's a serious situation. And this is what I mean about you knowing the truth. Okay. And yes, they've bred back with us. They're spacefaring folk. Okay. These guys are the ones that are always out there doing something, and they take gamma hits too. They work in an electromagnetic field to where they have no hair now. They're not hairless because of their genetics. They're hairless because they live in electrified fields. I've lost almost all the hair on my body. My hair on my head is very sparse. I mean, I don't have much of it left now. And it's my eyebrows, eyelashes, everything's falling out of me because I'm always in an electrified field. Have you ever asked a woman about electrolysis and what it does to them? Men who are transitioning, and they want to get rid of their beard, they electrically take it out.
Yeah.
This is what happens to them. And so they're kind of bald. They're not different. They're the same. They're just bald because of what they do.
Well, I mean, they could just change our DNA with COVID shots too. I heard that works.
I don't like that. Yeah, I know.
That was a really bad joke. I'm sorry.
They don't mess with you. They don't recode you at all. Yeah.
Anyway, listen, the last question I have for you is, do you know anything about the CE5 method, and do you think that it works?
Yes. I have worked with the Georgia CE5 before and was very active in it. Lately, because of the book and Preston working with me, I've walked away from it, but I'm about to jump back in. It works. It is a very good method. It teaches good, solid meditation. It teaches you to throw your mind into a remote view. You send your consciousness up so they can hear you. It teaches you how to connect with them. It's great. I will tell you this right now. The only thing that you're going to render in a CE5, though, is a drone or a Sentinel. They have bugged out. They are not with us right now. They only are watching us through drones. They're drones. Okay.
All right.
Our magnetosphere is so bad that they've crashed too much. They're done. They can't keep throwing away themselves for us. Okay. And they're now biding their time. They're waiting in a safe place until we go through what we're going through. And as soon as it's over, they're coming back because we have one more big bad thing coming after that, and we need to be gone. Okay. So yeah. But you can CE5. Now, here's the other part of good CE5. It teaches your psychic ability. It pumps you up. You can sit in groups together while you're CE5ing and practice being psychic together. Group activity is much more productive than singular. It puts you in a community of others who are like-minded with you and who know ET already, have had experiences in the past. And it also can draw a drone. And a drone will communicate with you because they've got AI in them and they can actually speak to you. And they will answer questions.
Yes,
Okay.
And Dolly has been inside a craft when people on the ground are doing the CE5 work. She's piloting up there and doing little, like, okay, here we go, flashing the lights at them. And we talked a little bit about in the book. I could tell Dolly was a little shy and didn't want to go too deep into it.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, just promise me something, okay? Please don't use a green laser on them, okay? It blinds the hell out of them.
Okay.
They can't handle it. If you want to use a red laser pointer, that's okay. That one won't hurt them. But the green ones, oh, yeah. Please don't use a green laser on them.
I have a blue one.
No.
Okay, dang it.
Green. Only green, yeah.
Well, I haven't seen any, so it doesn't really matter.
You can signal them with a laser pointer. What you do is you rotate it in a circle, and then you turn it off and on and off and on while you're rotating it. They will absolutely see that. You'll draw attention that way.
Oh, you gave me fuel for the weekend. See?
You bet. Yep.
That's what I'll be playing with. Well, hey, guys, it was awesome to talk with you guys. There's so much information. I know that we just scratched the surface of everything. But the book is fantastic, Preston. Dolly, your experience and your adventure is just, it's really fascinating and mind-blowing to me. And I am glad to have gotten the chance to have you guys on my show. I really appreciate it. And, I'd like to do it again sometime.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us and giving me the chance to come back on. I really appreciate the help to tell people about all this. And I just want to leave everybody with one thing, okay? Please remember that everything is driven by love. Love is positive. Love teaches us to use our abilities. It teaches us to be connected to one another, to show empathy for one another. Remember that always, okay? Employ it. It's the greatest gift you can give yourself and everybody else. And also remember this. I may have had an exceptional life, but so can you.
Fantastic. Preston, where can everybody get the book and find you and all that good stuff?
Yeah. Thanks, Ken. Thanks for having us on Somewhere in Dreamland. Appreciate it. The book is available on Amazon, other online retailers, bookstores. You can read more about it on my website, prestondennett.weebly.com. I'm all over social media. I have a YouTube channel. I know Dolly has a YouTube channel where she's putting out some of her videos. So this is an important subject, and I appreciate you having us on. Thanks very much.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, we'll talk at you later.
Bye.